Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Elias. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the best books of 2022. I was about to say 2023. Not me, getting my years mixed up as usual. Last year in 2022, I think it was a pretty good reading year. I think I read the most amount of books I have ever read in the past few years, considering I still have to yet reach my goal of reading 100 books. I'm just gonna keep putting it out there every year, 100 books until I eventually get it. But I'll do like a full in-depth like stats video on like the amount of books I read, like the genres and pages and whatnot and all that. So in this video, we're talking about my favorites. The ultimate, the best, the top tier books that I read last year. And let me tell you, pretty much all of the books are all fantasy, which is not surprising given the fact that I was pretty much in my fantasy era last year. I feel like every year I go through these phases of reading just from like one particular genre, I think. I think the year before it was mostly like thriller and speculative fiction. This year, I think I read less than like 5 thriller books and everything else was pretty much fantasy. So not complaining obviously because these books made it to my like top 5 books of the year. And if you hear any like skittering, scattering background noises, it's pure Nessie just doing cat things, you know, living rent free. So actually, before we get further into the video, I would like to thank today's video sponsor, the Book of the Month. So Book of the Month is a super fast and popular online growing book service for readers whose mission is to promote new and emerging authors so that you can spend more time reading and less time researching. Every month, they have a selection of 5 to 7 books to choose from, and they have a really great skip policy where if you're not feeling the vibe or the particular selection of books, you can totally skip it, risk-free, and you won't be charged. They also have the best prices for any newly released hardcover fiction book out there. So if you're interested, you can get your first book. So if you're interested, you can get your first book for only $9.99 using my code, ellias. Starting off 2023 right. Alright, so for this month, I'm actually pretty excited about the selection because I have the long-awaited sequel to Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and pretty excited and a little cautious going into this one because I didn't really like the first one as much, but I was still intrigued, so we'll see. The next one I chose is a thriller mystery, What Lies in the Woods, and this one follows a trio of young girls who one summer survive an attack and manage to put away a dangerous murderer away in prison. However, years later, we find out they have obviously a terrible secret they're hiding. That man may or may not be innocent. I don't know. We'll see. Cue the suspense. Alright, and those are the selections for this month. If you guys are interested, everything will be linked down below. And thank you once again to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. Alright, so how do I put this? We're going to start off with, I guess, the best fantasy series I have ever read in my entire life. And by starting off with that, I'm sure if you're already following me on my channel, you kind of can figure out which book series I'm going to talk about. And it's the Realm of the Elderling series by Robin Hobb. Now, I just want to preface by saying that there are books in the series where I think I gave like 3 stars, 4 stars, so there are different ratings. However, collectively, 5 stars, right? Because each book is like part of a trilogy, part of a whole. So I couldn't really base it off of that. And so I just wanted to quickly give you guys that preface of information. And I'm actually really proud of myself for reading and completing the amount of books that I have read in this series overall. I think there are like 16 books in the series, and I've pretty much read past the halfway mark of these books. And so in the first trilogy, I think I gave each book 4 stars. I think I gave the second one 4.5, but collectively overall a 5. How does that work if each book is like, what, 4 stars? I don't know. Math does not exist here, okay? I don't know, okay? I'm just going by feeling. And you know what? That's all that matters. So if you don't know what the series is about, I'm assuming you're new to my channel because I've been talking about the series non-stop last year. But anyways, in the first trilogy, we follow this young boy and his path on becoming the king's assassin. And it's like first-person point of view. And we're sort of introduced to a plethora of really pivotal main characters that play a huge role later on in the later books. What I really love about the series is that like a single character or side character would perform some minuscule action, right? Something super minimal. However, that small single course of action has such a direct impact later on in the books with a bunch of different characters in another part of the world And it's just honestly really fascinating and really intriguing to read about, but in it just without getting carried away. That's like the first trilogy. I would say the first trilogy is pretty strong, and I've made like full dedicated videos with spoilers and non-spoilers with them, so you guys can definitely check that out. The second trilogy took me on a 180 because the first book I remember giving like 3 out of 5 stars. I remember being super underwhelmed and disappointed by just the world building, the characters, everything about it, and it really put the series in jeopardy for me because I didn't know if I wanted to continue or not. However, I didn't lose faith. I should not have lost faith because Robin Hobb, the journey that I went on, everything about it, life-changing. I don't know how she does it. She has talent, power, magic, whatever you want to call it, in turning these god-awful fucking characters into these golden heroes that you just gotta love and you just adore later on. And it's just, honestly, a whirlwind roller coaster of emotions that I went on with this series, even more than the first trilogy. Collectively, I would say a strong 5 because the last 2 books in the series, chef's kiss. Everything about it. And so yeah, this one comes in, I would say, in 3rd place overall. So the second trilogy, this one follows the events after the first. So I would definitely read them in publication order. This one follows a different cast of characters with a different magic system in a different part of the world. And so we also follow a plethora of different characters, whereas in the first one, it's like first person point of view, only fits. This one we follow like a multitude of different characters, and I gotta say, some of these characters were so fucking aggravating and annoying to read from, but obviously, because of Robin Hobb, I later grew to love them. I don't know, if that's like not like the best case of parenting ever, I don't know what is, because initially in the beginning, you're like annoyed and you just like, oh my god, you're so annoying. I don't want to talk to you, you know, just go away. However, obviously they're your child, so you get to know them. And you discover like layers and hidden meanings, and you're like, oh my god, you're actually kind of fucking brilliant, and I kind of love you for it. I don't know, maybe my case of parenting might be skewed, but there it is. Loved it. Follows like pirates, talking ships, different magic system, sea serpents, and all that. So if you want plot twists and turns, this is a series for you. All right, so coming in at number 1, the top trilogy in this entire series, Fitz and the Fool. This is the 3rd set of books in this entire series, and I gotta say, this was ultimately the best ones, hands down. Everything about it was just so beautiful to read from, especially with the characters that I grew to love from the first trilogy. So in this one, if you couldn't already tell, we basically go back with Fitz as a main character from his first person point of view with just the characters that you later read and find out about in the first one. So there's a character in the first trilogy that he teams up with in this one. And I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but oh my gosh. And so yeah, I don't want to give away anything without giving away too many spoilers at all, because, you know, there are really fun reveals, and like I said, I made dedicated videos talking about each trilogy. But just know, if I had to pick and choose like the best trilogy, this would be that, and if I had to choose the best book, I want to say the last book, right? I think it's this one, the last book in this trilogy. This was, you know, pretty much the best thing I've ever read in fantasy, so there you go. So moving on into the next fantasy series. So I managed to read this last set of books like in the last month of the year. I honestly wasn't really expecting much. However, I am very glad that I stuck with it. Honestly, going in, I was very skeptical and very hesitant because I was just like, I don't get the hype. I don't get why this author is like so freaking beloved by many, you know? After reading the first book, granted split into 2 parts, all my doubts, hesitations, skepticism, all washed away. So, Brandon Sanderson, I have faith in you because The Way of Kings, Part 1 and Part 2, unmatched. Honestly, the characterization I would prefer with Robin Hobb. I really love what she does with her characters, but I guess the way he writes like story and action is just unparalleled. It is just really interesting how he crafts his story, because when I got into it, I could not understand a fucking thing. I think it was Part 1, this one. I think I read from beginning to end without understanding the full fundamental gist, like, or aspects of what this book contained. Like the magic system, the world building, the characters, like the culture and everything. I was like, I'm just here for the vibes, you know? I kind of gave up at some point, but at the same time, it didn't really hinder from my understanding of the story. I think in another aspect, it was more of the opposite. I was even more intrigued to continue and read and find out, you know, what was happening. However, one thing that I didn't really like as much is how he sort of built up to like a really climactic ending. I would have really liked, you know, some of the aspects of the end to be sprinkled more throughout the book, because some of the chapters that I read from, or some of the scenes that would happen, I would have been like, you know, it's kind of slow. Granted, I don't mind slow books, but I think it was like done deliberately to the point where I was like, everything was just like super mild, and all of a sudden, fucking boom, we have like this huge explosion of an ending. You know, some people may really like that. However, I wanted less subtlety and more, just more in general. These two books are two separate books in general. Even though they contain one story, I'm counting as two different books. I'm counting these two books, you know, separately. So, you know, I can say that I read more in 2022 thanks to these two books. But I actually gave the first one 4 out of 5, and the last one 5 out of 5. I really, really liked the ending to the point where I pretty much got like the first two books, the next two books in the series. Blake, who is like an avid fan of the series, told me to read like certain books before reading or going into Words of Radiance. I think I have to read Warbreaker before, you know, all that. It's like a whole ordeal. I was very disappointed because I wanted immediately to dive headfirst into the second book in the series, but it's very similar to what Robin Hobb does with her books, because in the first trilogy, I immediately wanted to skip the second one and just go into the third, but I'm so glad that I didn't, because, you know, layers, depth, emotion, roller coaster. Anyways, I'm a little worried that I might forget a lot of the things that went over my head when I go back into reading the second book, because there was a lot of things that I just didn't understand. And, you know, because I didn't fully grasp or understand it, I'm afraid that my understanding, like the fundamentals of it, might hinder my reading experience in the second book. But we'll see. This just tells me that I have to start Warbreaker soon and dive, you know, into Words of Radiance immediately. So I actually have already read Mistborn, the first book. I gotta say, from what I remember, it's very similar to how he crafts his stories. He has like this also explosive ending, I think, in Mistborn as well. There's like huge plot twists that I remember just being so amazed by. I actually never continued on with the series. It was just too much for me. It was like a lot. But you know what, Brandon Sanderson, I am definitely here to stay, seeing as I already purchased like a bunch of your books. So there you go. All right, so before we get into my ultimate favorites, we're going to talk about I Am Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. So this book is here on my list because I was just blown away by just everything about it. The story, the way she told the story, and I also read this book via audiobook. And lo and behold, Jeanette McCurdy was the actual person to narrate her own story, which I thought gave a more personal connection and depth to the whole story overall. I really connected with the story just because there are some aspects, especially with the relationship with the mother, that I could relate with, but not that severe or detrimental. You know, just personally, I could relate with a few aspects of the relationship. This is like one of the first, like, biographies, memoirs that I've ever read from anyone in general. And I also haven't read a lot of nonfiction books as well. But this one definitely takes the cake. It was funny, it was real, I connected with it, and it was sort of relatable. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say, keeping it short, simple, and sweet. And I think I also wept and cried and sobbed, I think, while reading this book. So yeah, it definitely hit me. I would advise, though, on the trigger warnings, because, I don't know, this book, because it was a biography and nonfiction, it felt even more real to me than the other books where these triggers would be in, just because the way it was told and how it was told. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say, but 5 out of 5 freaking stars. All right, so last and not least, we have my ultimate favorite. My ultimate beloved book of this year. I don't know if you guys can guess what it is, but it starts with the letter P. You already know it. Pura Nessie. Say hello. Say hello, Pura. Pura Nessie. I think with each passing day, he looks grumpier and grumpier, but I swear to you, he's like pretty much the most docile, most loving cat ever. Every night, without fail, he cuddles up next to me, his ass in my face, and just sleeps on me for long periods of time. And when I say time, it's like 5 to 10 minutes. But either way, that's pretty much all the love I need, right? But yeah, so this is Pura, aka Pura Nessie, or PP for short. And I named him after one of my favorite books of all time. Very cliched, I know, but there you go. He's so done with this. All right, I'll let you go now. So, obviously, Pura Nessie by Susanna Clarke. This book, short as it is, I think was pretty much one of the most impactful books I've ever read up to date. There was just so much subtlety and hidden meaning behind this book in general. Everything about it, the words, the characters, the descriptions, the story, everything about it just felt meticulous and deliberate to me in a very subtle, fragile, and delicate way. I don't know, maybe I'm doing like a play on words here, because this is what this book was, a play on words and meanings, and honestly, a huge, serious callback to the nostalgia of your childhood self. All your dreams, all your imaginations, all your feelings that you felt as a child, that wonder, it's within this book. Right, so I know that some people get annoyed when other people say, oh, this is the type of book where you shouldn't really know anything about it, don't read the summary or the blurb, just go into it blind. And honestly, you can stay annoyed because that is exactly what I'm telling you to do. Don't even read what the story is about, or the summary, or the back. Just go into it blind, and honestly, I can promise you, go into it blind, and I'm gonna get sentimental here.
But reach deep within yourself, that hidden wonder you felt as a kid again.
And listen, if you can't feel that, then there's obviously something wrong with your childhood. Okay? Well, in that case, that's, you do you. But to the people who want to recall that same magical feeling you had when you were a kid, then look no further. I would honestly describe this book akin to going to a place you've never been before. However, once you step foot in this place, in a place you've never been before, it feels in part strangely familiar to you, right? Or in contrast, quite the opposite, where you go to a place you're familiar with, however, one day you smell something different, and that smell sort of brings like a memory back when you had it when you were a kid that you associated with that smell. And so yeah, I'm getting really deep, really sentimental here, but this book here is beloved, okay? Beloved. So yeah, there you go. This book, less than 250 pages, okay? If you are hesitant to read a thick, big book, and you sort of want a book that you can sort of escape into, and find your own meaning in your own mind for what you want to do, then read this book, because this book is so fucking good. Obviously, this book is good. I really liked it. I really loved the writing style, and I think, honestly, I've never read anything like this before. Yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to say, unless, I go into a huge tangent about like 20 minutes on why you should read this book. But there you go. 5 out of 5 stars. Alright, so before I end off the video, I'm just going to give a few quick shoutouts, a few honorable mentions to some of the books that I really enjoyed reading this year that didn't make it to my ultimate favorites list. Alright, so first up we have the series Chainsaw Man and Spy Family, 2 manga series which I read, caught up on, and loved. Like, the stories in here, vastly different. House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland, if you really like sophisticated, edgy, dark, gothic take with a twist of like Stranger Things, this might be the book for you. Next up, we have The Night Shift, which is my last read of the last day of last year. Alright, so next up, we have Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which I really loved. It really took me by surprise on how much I really liked it and loved it. Like, honestly, this is one of the better classics. Next up, we have The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This was fantastic. It honestly reminded me a little bit of Avatar: The Last Airbender with like rock benders and all that. And a lot of people have said that they were really confused, or it was really hard to get into this book. I was like, that's a lie, because this was super easy to get into for me anyway. I mean, I felt like Brandon Sanderson's books were hard to get into in the first place. I mean, I read like, over 300 pages of part 1 before I even got fully invested into the story. But this one, less than that even, and the plot twist in this one was killer. So yeah, definitely recommend if you're looking for a really unique fantasy. Obviously, I couldn't end 2022 without including some of the books from my favorite paranormal fantasy authors, and the first one up being Crowbones by Anne Bishop. So this is the 8th book in the spin-off series overall. I guess all I can say is that I really liked being back into this world again with all these characters, the setting. It was very primal and very dark, perfect for a Halloween read. So last and not least, I have Soul Taken by Patricia Briggs. This is like the 13th book in the series overall, and it follows Mercy Thompson, who is a coyote shapeshifter dealing with a lot of shit. But in this one, I believe we're dealing with the Grim Reaper. So there you go. Alright, so that is pretty much all of my favorite books, the top books of 2022. Crossing my fingers, here's to 2023, that it will be a good reading year, not for me, but also for all of you guys as well. Please let me know down in the comments below if you have any recommendations. What were some of your favorite books of 2022? Stay tuned for my worst books of 2022, as well as my stats video and my most anticipated reads of 2023. Alright, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you all soon with a new video. How did you get up there? You can get up there without... You can get up there? Spy Family. Can you fucking not, please? Like, what are you backing into? It's honestly just a single truck outside trying to parallel park. No one gives a fuck. It's honestly not even a big truck. It's like one of those 12-seater vans, you know?